I'm back. This is part 2. Apologize for that. I ran out of room. But I'll go back into what I was talking about bipolar disorder or mania disorder. This week we may be all involved mentally and angry about this one incident or this one event or this one political argument, and then next week we'll have forgotten it and be on this one. So there's the constant inner war in America as far as what defines us. You know, some will be hooked in by a politician who says that they're Christian and they're for a Christian value, and we want to remain a Christian nation. So we go with them. And then there's the one that's angry at the old values, and the rest of the flock goes with them. But ultimately, we shouldn't define ourselves as a nation. We shouldn't define ourselves as Christian by the politics that we're under, if that makes sense. I think in America, American Christianity anyway, has started defining itself by the fact that we are a democratic nation. Now, I'm not getting into a thing about democracy or non-democracy. I'm glad we're a democratic nation. What I am saying is that Christians in other countries are persecuted and martyred, and even more so today than they ever have been. So they don't define themselves by their national identity or their politics. If they define themselves as Christians, it's because they're following Christ. Where in America, we became a Christian nation, established ourselves as a Christian nation, but in the name of God and in the name of Christ, we did some very, very painful and traumatic things. So there's a lot of trauma in our past, and what surprises me is, and I have been reading about this for personal reasons, along with what I was reading in school, and so the two kind of interlaced or overlapped as far as trauma and the social issues that affect Native America today on the different reservations, the racism that still exists with them, and the marginalization, cultural appropriation, these kinds of things that go on, and it's synonymous with that nation, and they're also the most underrepresented nation. So I was thinking about how that affects white America. If those kinds of the guilt from that goes down through the generations, as well as the anger from that goes down through the generations. Anyway, the trauma from it goes down, and the unwillingness to reconcile, probably on both sides. We try to make reparations, and we send coats and different money and different kinds of things, and go paint their churches, and then we never think about them again. But we really don't do the hard healing that is necessary, and have conversations and make admissions and reconcile. Instead, we've become very extreme in our self-loathing as a nation, and this is true because I talk to people, students from other universities who are younger than I am, and it's like there's a 10-year gap. There's the younger people who have nothing good to say about the country that they live in, because of, whereas we used to whitewash our history, now we don't whitewash it so much anymore, but we don't have anything good to say about our own country anymore. So we went from being very pro-America, very pro-patriot, to very self-loathing, which is also, even in narcissism, they seem to love themselves, seem to want their own way, will do anything to get their own way, but it's all to validate themselves, because they, on the very core of themselves, they hate themselves. And so you take narcissism, you take bipolar disorder, you take dissociative identity disorder, which is a split personality, and all of these things are represented in America today, and they all have a lack of empathy. They all have a lack of caring. They all have a lack of self-respect, and they also all have a sense of entitlement. And America has always exemplified almost a sense of entitlement. I'm not talking about just regular people on the ground. I'm just talking about nationally. We've almost had a sense of entitlement. And now, even though our politics have changed and our worldviews have changed, it's still a sense of entitlement. It's just kind of going the other way. So, that was my thesis, and that's what my thesis was about, was just analyzing whether America has a identity crisis as a nation, not just as individuals, which is a spiritual national level, if they have an identity crisis, because on Erickson's 8-stage theory of development, if America was a live human being, if she was a woman, and in her 5th stage she was, 150 years old or whatever, where would she be today? That was my very, very interesting, odd, probably, thesis. But that's the kinds of things that I think about. So that's the kinds of things I've read about, and if you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them. Again, I do apologize that my thesis wasn't more thorough or more accurately sound, and I would have done this presentation with a PowerPoint, but I'm working off a Chromebook, and I couldn't add a video or audio to a PowerPoint presentation. I could only do a PowerPoint presentation. So I decided to just sit and talk about what I wrote about and see how that goes. Be blessed.